Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the dedication of the new East Wing of our College of Architecture and Planning and the new facility for the Center for Energy Research, Education, and Service. We will begin with the invocation by Dr. Alan D. Byrne, pastor of the College Avenue United Methodist Church.
Let us bow in prayer. God our Father, architect of the universe and author of all that is good and beautiful, we thank you for the School of Architecture at Ball State. We thank you for the faculty and the students who learn together new ways of building that add both to the beauty and the usefulness of human society. We pray that together we may construct the kind of future that preserves and cares for the natural resources of our world, rather than destroying those natural resources. On this day of dedication, our Father, we pray that you'll be with us throughout this service, but we pray also that you'll be with us in the days and the years to come, that what we do in the School of Architecture will be of service to you and a blessing to generations yet unborn. In the spirit of love we pray. Amen.
A number of the members of the platform party will be participating in the program, and they will be introduced as they do so. I will introduce at this time our other guests on the platform. I would ask that they would stand as they are introduced, and that request that you would recognize them as a group at the end of the introductions. Beginning on my left in the front row, Mr. Jack Peckinpah, member of the University Board of Trustees from Muncie. Mr. James Garrettson, Secretary of the Board of Trustees from Carmel, Indiana. Miss Lori Hart, student member of the Board of Trustees. She's a graduate student in biology from Winchester. In the second row, again on my left, Mr. Mark Sexton. He's a graduate of our undergraduate program in landscape architecture, presently working in Indianapolis for Browning Day, Pollock, Mullins, Dierdorf, and so on and so on. Mr. Edward Mitro, Mr. Sexton is representing, obviously, our alumni. Mr. Ed Mitro is in his final year in our graduate program in urban regional planning. He's from Maryville, Indiana, representing the graduate student body. Ms. Teresa Carpenter, in her final year in the undergraduate program in architecture from Syracuse, Indiana, representing our undergraduate student body. Professor Charles Sappenfield, faculty member in architecture and dean of the college from 1965 until 1981. Mr. Nathaniel Owings, founding partner of the firm of Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill from Big Sur, California. A marvelous man, first honorary degree recipient that was from Ball State that was recommended by our college. He also moderated this morning's symposium, for which we thank him very much. Mr. Donald Sporlater, partner in the firm of Crumley, Sporlater and Associates of South Bend, architects for the building. Professor Jeff Hall, Associate Dean of the college and co-coordinator of today's festivities. Professor Linda Nelson, faculty member in architecture, and the other of the two halves, co-coordinator of today's activities. Professor Francis Parker, chairman of the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, and Professor Charles Derwater, chairman of the Department of Landscape Architecture. Thank you very much. We are pleased indeed to have in attendance today, and it is my personal pleasure to introduce the Honorable Robert Dior, Governor of the State of Indiana.
Thank you, Dean Fisher, and my greetings to the President of the Board of Trustees, Will Parker, and to the President of the University, who is one of those rare gentlemen, Dr. Bell, who has risen to serve at an important time in the history of Ball State. And my greetings to Mr. Nathaniel Owings, and my appreciation to him for having come to Indiana, his native state, to participate this morning in the convocation and the discussions which took place. He distinguishes the state of Indiana by his having been smart enough to have been born in this state, but more particularly because of his having continued to bring renown to Indiana. I have an opportunity at least twice daily, but usually several times during the day, to look at one of his most recent works of architecture, the American United Life Building, just across the street from the Indiana State Capitol building. A most unusual, most appealing, and incidentally, the tallest building in the state of Indiana by some few feet, having exceeded that of the Indiana National Bank building, but of distinct design. I mention it for two reasons. Number one, because it is representative of the contribution to this nation's architecture made by this Hoosier son, and secondly, to make the point that the School of Architecture at Ball State, new as it is, may well make a contribution not just to Indiana, but to this country, comparable to that of Mr. Owings, or at least aiming in that direction as time goes on. Indiana was not fortunate enough to have a public school of architecture until fairly recently. I'm proud of the fact that Ball State University has a school of architecture, and I'm proud that this building, which is now being added to this magnificent campus, is one which is related to architecture. It also seems to have a number of other functions, particularly research and energy, education, and all manner of service. It seems to be a compendium of all those things that are most necessary today on a campus which is trying to deal with today's world. And I believe that Ball State University is an institution that is doing just that, attempting to make a major contribution in today's world, in the dealing with the difficulties that we experience at the moment, but also one of those rare institutions that is looking squarely in the eye at the future of this state, but more particularly, I think, the future of this nation. Probably no profession has so much to do with telling the story of what a given time might have been like as architecture. We all have traveled widely and enjoy the benefits of those gems of architecture both in this country and in other parts of the world. But primarily, one of the reasons we enjoy them is because they typify so greatly the attitudes of society of the generation in which the building was constructed. I'm convinced in my own mind, therefore, that the School of Architecture is going to have a major impact upon the United States simply because it is producing highly qualified architects to make their contribution to society, and the history books, I predict, will write about them, just as the history books are already writing about Nathaniel Owings. It's my pleasure to be here to give greetings for the entire populace of the state of Indiana, and my genuine pleasure to be here to recognize this latest in the addition of the fine architecture and fine structures on the campus at Ball State University.
Thank you, Governor Orr. The president of our university, Dr. Robert P. Bell.
Governor Orr, President Parker, distinguished members of the Platform Party, the faculty, students, and all the guests and friends of the university, and especially to a group of representatives and senators that we have with us to commemorate this day. You know, it is only on occasions of this kind that we have the distinct pleasure of taking particular note of the addition to our campus. An addition to a campus that means more, and we hope much better, education than we have had before. Only a short time ago, the College of Architecture was meeting in some 6 places over the campus. Now you can imagine it did not take much effort to stir the interest within the faculty for the request of a new building. In fact, no one stirred it, it just happened. But the amount of work that goes into writing the program for an addition of this kind is of no small consequence. We then go to our Board of Trustees to convince them that, yes, this is something that needs to be done. And then we go to the Commission for Higher Education, and we go to the State Budget Office, hence to the state legislature. Thus, you see, we have many people involved in any new structure that goes up on a university campus in the state of Indiana. This afternoon, I want to extend my thanks and appreciation on behalf of the university to all of you who have had any part in making possible this, one of the newest, one of the most novel additions to an architecture building we know of throughout the world. Our solar center down there has attributes that I am told are not to be matched anyplace, not to be found anyplace else. That alone is not enough. But if you will take the time this afternoon to see what is there, listen to the people tell you what is taking place and what shall take place, I think you will be as excited as am I about future activity on this campus, in this facility, and for the benefit of the students that we will be sending out throughout the state of Indiana, throughout the nation, and we'll see the results for many generations to come. To all of you, my thanks, my appreciation. Thank you.
Our 4 honorary degree recipients today are most distinguished representatives of the 4 disciplinary areas which are housed in the New East Wing. These 4 areas are, as I'm sure almost everyone knows, architecture, landscape architecture, planning, and energy. The 4 gentlemen with whom we exchange honors today are Mr. M. Paul Friedberg, landscape architect and planner from New York, Mr. Romaldo Jurgla, architect and planner from New York, Mr. Amory Levins, physicist and energy consultant from Colorado, and Mr. Kevin Lynch, urban planner, designer from Massachusetts. President Bell and Dr. James B. Cook, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, will confer the degrees.
As each of the candidates comes forward, he will be escorted by a member of the college faculty. M. Paul Friedberg, escorted by Charles A. DeDerwater, Chairman of the Department of Landscape Architecture. For one who has spent most of his life in a large metropolitan center, M. Paul Friedberg understands the problems that cities pose, be they New York City, Madison, Wisconsin, Kansas City, Washington, D.C., or Vancouver, British Columbia. Skyscrapers and other massive blocks of brick, stone, steel, and precast cement need the green touch to make them warm and less formidable places in which to live and to work. Mr. Friedberg, director of the Urban Landscape Program at City College of New York, combines his talents as landscape educator and a practitioner with his own firm, M. Paul Friedberg and Partners of New York City, to solve in new and innovative ways the challenges of the urban environment. Winner of over 50 awards from such prestigious organizations as the American Society of Landscape Architects, American Institute of Architects, New York Council on the Arts, and the Municipal Arts Society, Mr. Friedberg continues to make urban space exciting. A graduate of Cornell University, Mr. Friedberg is a fellow of the American Society of Landscape Architects and a registered landscape architect in 6 states. Mr. President, it is my honor to present a distinguished American landscape architect, M. Paul Friedberg, for the honorary Doctor of Laws degree.
An urban landscape architect, you, M. Paul Friedberg, have added a new and exciting dimension to our urban environment. You have inspired others in the city to restore and protect the environment in which millions work and transact business each day. Your concern for the work environment of those whose business and professional lives are spent in the canyons of New York City, or who work in massive impersonal settings in smaller cities, has won for you the profound respect of your colleagues and the millions who appreciate the transformation of the hot city asphalt into small parks and uninteresting drab offices into green oases. Frequently inundated with snow during the dreary winter months, residents of Niagara Falls, New York, find your treatment of the Rainbow Center Winter Garden, with its gigantic greenhouse lobby, therapeutic as well as educational and recreational. When the American Institute of Architects awarded you its medal in 1980 for your inspiration and influence to the architecture profession, the jury noted that throughout your career you have been able to introduce a new dimension of life for different ages and social groups in the urban environment. We are grateful to you for your insight and your foresight. By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Ball State University, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws with all the rights and privileges thereunto pertaining, and award you the diploma in testimony thereof, and present you the academic hood appropriate to the degree. Congratulations and many, many thanks.
Romaldo Jurgala. Last Saturday, upon his return from Australia, Romaldo Jurgala was unexpectedly admitted to the hospital for coronary surgery. The surgery was performed on Tuesday, and he is now satisfactorily recovering. Professor Marvin Rosenman, Chairman of the Department of Architecture, will accept the degree for Professor Jurgala. Since 1949, the year Romaldo Jurgala accepted a Fulbright fellowship to study for a master's degree in the School of Architecture, Columbia University, you, Romaldo Jurgala, have justifiably gained respect and admiration and awards from the architecture profession in the United States and abroad. It was in 1949 that you, a young Italian graduate student, won a first prize for your design of facilities for the Lido in Venice and another prize for a nautical institute at Palermo, Italy. Design awards, competition commissions, and honors have been regular since then. 2 architectural groups in 1974 recognized your firm, Mitchell Jergala of Philadelphia, New York, for the design of Columbus East High School in Columbus, Indiana. Your prize-winning buildings are found on college and university campuses and also include public libraries, public and private headquarters buildings, museums, and governmental buildings. 2 especially are worthy of special recognition, both winning entries in competitions: the Wainwright State Office Complex in St. Louis, Missouri, and the Australian Parliament House in Canberra, Australia. Author of numerous articles and 3 books, one on your friend and mentor, the late Louis I. Kahn, you share your talents generously with your profession as you serve a dual role as chairman of the School of Architecture, Columbia University, and as a partner in Mitchell Jergala Architects. Mr. President, it is my honor to present the internationally recognized architect, Romaldo Jergala, for the honorary Doctor of Laws degree.
I know each of you would join me in sending our best hopes and wishes to Mr. Jergala for a speedy and complete recovery. National and international award-winning architect, architectural educator, author, historian, responsible and dedicated professional. Romaldo Jergala, your colleagues in the Indiana Society of Architecture, and the faculty and students in the College of Architecture and Planning, Ball State University, salute you with profound admiration and respect. Your contribution to architecture education reflect your thoughtful concern for the total profession, just as your architectural designs provide, in your own words, an itinerary among fragments, always different, always responding to differing instances of life and to natural conditions. We commend to our students your professional credo, that you regard yourself as a professional architect with a sense of professional integrity and obligation to society. By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Ball State University, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws with all the rights and privileges thereunto pertaining, and award you the diploma in testimony thereof, and present you the academic hood appropriate to the degree.
Amory B. Lovins. Amory B. Lovins is escorted by Robert J. Kester, Director of the Center for Energy Research, Education, and Service. Amory B. Lovins' academic credentials are impeccable. He has degrees in physics from Harvard and Oxford, where until 1971 he was an Oxford Don. Twice he has been Regents Lecturer at the University of California, once in resource policy and a second time in economics. He has also been the Grauer Lecturer at the University of British Columbia. Recently, he and his wife have held the Henry R. Luce Visiting Professorship at Dartmouth. He has published. Amory and his wife, L. Hunter Lovins, have co-authored a dozen books and over 100 technical papers. Together, they participate in over 100 lectures and seminars each year for academic, governmental, and financial groups. Mr. Lovins is a researcher. He is Director of Research at the Rocky Mountain Institute, a nonprofit foundation exploring interconnections between energy, water, agriculture, security, and economics. He is also a policy advisor to Friends of the Earth, and active in energy policy as advisor and consultant in 15 nations. A consultant experimental physicist, Mr. Lovins is the founder of the International Project for Soft Energy Paths. In 1981, he served on the Senior Advisory Board of the U.S. Department of Energy. Mr. President, it is my honor to present a distinguished energy research physicist, author, lecturer, and international energy consultant for the Doctor of Laws degree.
With world attention focused on energy and the need for workable and enforceable energy policies, you, Amory Lovins, and your wife, L. Hunter Lovins, are valuable and articulate resources whose expertise is sought by heads of state and government agencies on a global scale. Likewise, industry, the financial world, and academe seek your counsel. Newsweek indicated that your prophetic analyses have placed the two of you among the Western world's most influential energy thinkers. Equally significant has been your contributions to Friends of the Earth and its foundations, and your leadership as the founder of the International Project for Soft and Energy Paths, a foundation project. Analysts, lecturers, and consultants, your work has taken you to 15 nations where you have shared your expertise with chancellors, prime ministers, governors, and testified before international, national, and regional legislative and regulatory agencies, from the United Nations to atomic, nuclear, hydro, electrical, petrol, and solar energy groups. Your books, lectures, and blue ribbon film, Lovins on the Soft Path, are carefully synthesized and meticulously documented. By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees of Ball State University, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws, with all the rights and privileges thereunto pertaining, and award you the diploma in testimony thereof, and present you the academic hood appropriate to the degree. Congratulations and many thanks. Many thanks.
Kevin Lynch. Kevin Lynch is escorted by Dr. Francis H. Parker, Chairman of the Department of Urban Studies and Planning. A former student of the late Frank Lloyd Wright, you, Kevin Lynch, Professor Emeritus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, added a new word, imageability, to architects' and planners' vocabulary and conscience when you published your first book, The Image of the City. How many professionals had given much thought to the image or mental picture that city dwellers have of their environment? But you, a careful researcher using the tools of the social scientist, provided for the first time objective criteria for planners and architects by which they can analyze a city, utilizing public perceptions about it. You have indirectly been responsible for sensitizing people to their urban environments, helping them to realize what is worth saving and what can be improved with good urban design. Author of numerous articles, you also have 7 books whose titles speak to your dedication, research, and work. A Theory of Good City Form, Growing Up in Cities, Managing the Sense of a Region, What Time Is This Place?, The View from the Road, and Site Planning. Appropriately, the Boston Society of Architects has honored you with its Urban Design Award, the American Institute of Architects with the Allied Professions Medal, and the American Institute of Planners with its 50th Anniversary Award. Mr. President, it is my honor to present Kevin Lynch, who has added so much to architecture and planning education in America and the quality of life for all who live and work in and visit American cities.
Kevin Lynch, when your book, The Image of the City, was published in 1960, one reviewer wrote, "City planners and urban designers everywhere will be taking account of his work for years to come." 23 years later, urban planners and designers, social scientists, and government leaders, as well as professors and students in architecture schools across the country, look to this book as a profoundly significant contribution to the field of planning. For the first time, people who live in cities were consulted about how they perceive their urban environment. This new humanistic concept to planning has been widely lauded, and justifiably so. Your professional career has had many dimensions, each building upon and adding to the richness and depth of the other. City planner, urban designer, teacher, researcher, writer, you continue to consult on key projects across this country. Our students and faculty are grateful for the opportunity to observe you at work at the Park Design Assistance Team workshop that resulted in conceptualizing the use of inner-city land in Indianapolis for the White River Park. By the authority vested in me, by the Board of Trustees of Ball State University, I hereby confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Laws with all the rights and privileges thereunto pertaining, and award you the diploma in testimony thereof, and present you the academic hood appropriate to the degree.
We will now have the pleasure of hearing from our new honorary degree recipients. I will not introduce them individually. They will come and speak in the order in which the degrees were awarded. Mr. M. Paul Friedberg, Mr. Emery Levins, and Mr. Kevin Lynch.
First, let me express my pleasure in receiving this honor. Ironically, my mother always wanted me to be a doctor. She never understood what a landscape architect was. This moment is especially sweet, for I've spent almost 30 years intervening in the form of the urban environment. As the landscape of cities generally are commonly owned and used by the public, my work has always been a dialogue between people and place. The primary thrust for me has been to serve the public, or to put it in another way, for my work to have social purpose. We landscape architects have this vague and elusive, abstract notion to track in attending to our work. We don't exploit form as inherent in technology, but rather only the social shifts that they manifest. We track the human condition and can only measure our success through public approval, as defined by use. The honor you award me is a form of measure as well, and I'm grateful for it, especially as it comes from an institution that is multidisciplined. This morning I suggested that designers who mold the environment to reflect the image of human potentiality must come together in a coherent and cooperative forum in order to best serve themselves and the responsibilities that they have assumed. Let me suggest that here at the university, Ball State, this process should begin, and not later in professional life. For this is the forum in which we can come together to appreciate the interdependence and the interrelationship of the disciplines that collectively modify the landscape in order to facilitate the full expression of human potentiality, and nothing less. For it is giving form to human experience that is our thrust. And universities such as Ball State, where many design disciplines are housed in the same structure, you can lead by opening the doors of the studios to each other and cementing the concept of collaboration as a tool of understanding, for understanding is the foundation of design. In the age of specialization, to advocate for the generalist may seem paradoxically, yet the complexity of contemporary society and the emerging social values of validation and satisfaction and identity and more places demands on the design profession that mandates a broadening of our understanding of change, which specialization cannot accommodate. We must understand behavior without being social scientists, business without becoming entrepreneurs, education without being academics, natural resources without becoming scientists. I suspect that's one reason I like my profession, because I'm always into somebody else's business. We are unable to accommodate change if we don't understand the world around us, for we are responsible for making change, and in turn, it makes us. Thank you.
I am honored to join this community of scholars, of practical scholars, who know the uses not only of the mortarboard but also of the trowel. And as we meet to dedicate a building in which will take place work which will contribute to the solution of many of the world's problems, let me offer the reflection that the cause of problems is solutions. That is, that if we conceive of the scope of our work too narrowly, there is a danger of solving our problems by making them into somebody else's problems. We can solve the energy problem by making it into a problem of peace, justice, environment, water, and so on. We can push the problem into somebody else's pigeonhole and relabel it, but it's still there. In order to avoid that, we need exactly the kind of transdisciplinary understanding at which the work of this university is aimed. And let me offer you a little parable about why that matters. It comes from Borneo, where some years ago the Dayak people who live in longhouses were suffering from malaria. The World Health Organization attacked this problem with verve and abundant DDT. It seemed to work pretty well. The malaria declined. But at the same time, the roofs of the longhouses started falling down on people's heads. Because it seems the DDT had also killed a parasitic wasp which ate caterpillars which ate roof thatching. Worse than that, however, the DDT-poisoned insects were eaten by little lizardy things called geckos, which were eaten by the cats. And as the DDT built up in the food chain, the cats died. Without the cats, the rats flourished. And the World Health Organization was then faced with an outbreak of sylvatic plague and was obliged thereby to parachute live cats into Borneo. That is what comes of not understanding the wholeness and the interconnectedness of things. To students, therefore, to whose work this building is dedicated, let me urge that you study everything you can possibly lay your hands on. The less obviously connected or related, the better. If your advisors start to raise their eyebrows and say, I don't see quite what this has to do with that, then you're probably on the right track. Now, of course we need specialized expertise, and we need to use better the expertise we have. We need, for example, to use the planning expertise and the landscape architecture expertise of this university to make sure that we don't cut down a grove of trees, which I'm told, I hope wrongly, has been marked with yellow paint to be cut down so that a parking garage can be built there, where it could be put elsewhere. We need to use the kind of impressive expertise that we rely upon to make sure that new buildings will work, that they'll be pleasant to live in, that they won't fall down. And those kinds of mastery of technical disciplines inspire the greatest respect and deserve it. But at the same time, we need the rarer ability to make connections that nobody has made before. To that kind of learning especially, I hope the building will be dedicated. In the blend of the theoretical and practical, which the work of the college embodies. I keep thinking of the time that one of the founders of the New Alchemy Institute, Bill McClarney, was accosted by a lady who wanted to know why he was spending his time messing around with vats of algae and fish, messy things of that sort, when what really mattered in the world was love. He said, well, there's theoretical love, and then there's applied love. That's what we're going to practice here. Thank you.
Applied love, I like that. Dr. Bell, Governor Orr, our friends on and off the platform, it's a happy occasion, dedicating a new building without meaning to change that in any way. I'd like to say something in memory of a dear friend of mine, partly because he was my close friend, but also because I think he was a model for the kind of professional that an environmental designer should be. This man was a man named Donald Appleyard, recently died in an accident a few months ago, a tragic accident. He was a very modest man, had a great deal of self-deprecating humor, those of you who knew him, an ability to manage warring groups whenever he got in a tight spot. But underneath that, he was really a passionate person, a person who, despite the surface, was passionately concerned with the environment, the physical environment, and how it affected the people that lived in it. He connected, as Paul has been talking about connections between the professions. He himself came through a whole series of professional experiences. He was teaching in Berkeley in California, teaching in landscape architecture, teaching in planning, also working with architects, one of the persons who really sewed that group together. A brilliant administrator, by the way, but even better teacher, as his former students will testify. He did research. He did some outstanding research on perception, but also built the Environmental Simulation Laboratory in Berkeley, which was a fantastic machine for reproducing the view as you move through an environment from model. The main thing, though, despite all of the research and the articles and books he wrote, is that he really talked to people. He really, when he went into an area, he talked not only to the leaders, but to the people that lived there, and got a sense of what their hopes and their fears and what they wanted was. Really, and a man who was really in the flower of his work. His intellectual work was just beginning to flower after all his accomplishments when this tragic accident cut him off. As I say, I think, to me at least, if you don't know of his work, read his work. To me, he's a model of what a person in environmental design could be: compassionate and yet tough-minded, a practitioner, I would say, of applied love, as Amory has just said. And I miss him, and I hope that the school will carry on his work.
Thank you, gentlemen. Professor Roseman would like to have a few moments to express thanks on behalf of Ramaldo Jurgla.
I'm clearly not the young Italian graduate student that won the first prize for the design of facilities for the Lido in Venice, but I have had the pleasure of knowing Ramaldo Jurgla for over 20 years, and in that time I've developed a great deal of respect for him as a teacher, as an architect, and as a friend. And over that time, I've seen him demonstrate an inordinate amount of effort towards the profession of architecture and an exceptional ability as an architectural designer, and most importantly of all, he has a very humble manner about him, which is probably his greatest attribute. Ramaldo Jurgla picked a hell of a time to have a coronary operation, but it wasn't his choice. And I too join all of you in wishing him a successful and speedy recovery. I would like to thank you, Mr. President, on behalf of Romaldo Jurgula for this honor, and I think he, along with Nathaniel Owings here, is undoubtedly one of the great architects of our time, and I thank you.
The university felt that this would be consequently an appropriate occasion to present Charles with a small token of our appreciation. Dr. Cook will make the presentation.
Charles M. Sappenfield, Fellow, American Institute of Architects, the first Dean of the College of Architecture and Planning, was for 16 years the driving force behind the growth and development of this college. In 1965, soon after the Indiana General Assembly selected Ball State University as the site for the state's first publicly supported architectural school, he was selected as dean from a field of 50 applicants. Sappenfield came to Indiana from North Carolina, where he was principal of his own firm in Asheville while also teaching at Clemson University. A graduate of the North Carolina State University School of Design, where he taught for 3 years, Sappenfield later earned a diploma in architecture at the Royal Danish Academy as a Fulbright Hays Scholar. He has won 12 national, regional, and state design awards for his professional work. At the time of his selection in June of 1965, the new college was without faculty, curriculum, students, and building. Under Dean Sappenfield's direction, a curriculum was established and the college began with 3 faculty and 50 students, growing in its first 15 years to 41 faculty, 10 staff, and over 500 students. 3 departments were established: architecture, landscape architecture, and urban studies and planning. Interdisciplinary studies were established in history and preservation, community-based projects, guest lectures and exhibits, and research and grants. Dean Sappenfield was instrumental in seeking new and expanded facilities, and the programs of the college grew. Completion of a new building in 1972 enabled the college to vacate its first home in Quonset huts. Under his administration, the college was successful in 1979 in gaining university support and legislative approval for a major addition to that facility, which we dedicate today. Led by the unceasing energy and enthusiasm of Charles Sappenfield, the college acquired a reputation of excellence in design education. A talented faculty of architects and planners was recruited to teach and participate in curriculum development. Many of Indiana's towns and cities benefited from student workshops and charrettes on environmental improvements, initiated or inspired by Dean Sappenfield. Special events, symposia, lectures, exhibits, research, publications, and field studies in Europe further established the college's national and international image. Alumni have distinguished themselves professionally across the country and in many cities throughout the world, a tribute again to his conscientious endeavors. Since his resignation as dean in 1981, he has continued in his service to the college and Ball State through teaching and research. Charles M. Sappenfield worked to establish strong foundations for the College of Architecture and Planning, predicated on the highest professional standards. We thank him for his leadership and his efforts, which have benefited the college and the environmental design professions in Indiana. We are indebted to him for his talent and dedication and will continue to look for him for guidance in the years ahead. As a token of our appreciation, we have a medal that we will present, and I would be pleased if Dean Fisher would help me present this as well. Charles is so tall that it takes 2. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
This is a wonderful surprise. Fisher told me I'd have to be introduced, but he didn't tell me about this. Anything that might come to me when I wear this, you can know that I'm wearing it for a whole team of people The major team is sitting right down here. But everything that we've been able to do at Ball State, we've done in a Ball State teamwork concept and a context. And that the idea that we had teamwork, but we've also had a dream here. And I think our whole future depends on just that same thing, the continuation of that teamwork and the continuation of a dream for the college. Thank you very much.
At this time, Mr. Brian Crumlish will present the building on behalf of Crumlish Sport Leader and Associates, and Mr. Will Parker, President of the University Board of Trustees, will accept the building on behalf of the university.
Governor, members of the Board of Trustees, President Bell, distinguished visitors, Charles Sappenfield, faculty colleagues, students and friends. It's a very happy day for me today to be here. I've been asked to present a building to this gracious university. Of course, it isn't mine to give. It belongs to so many people. But what I say up here, I say on behalf of my partner too, Don Sporleader. Our part came as the winner, Paul, of a commission. And I've thought many times about your remark that the winner is the one who loses the least. And I can only say to that, it may be true up to a point. Mr. Owings remarked about heritage, and I thought perhaps it would be my job to remind some young people that the heritage of this building, well, it had a grandsire, was a Quonset hut, and the closest living kin is a masonry tower. Now, I think when you look at the building and think of heritage, you might realize that some of that heritage has been brought into this building. Mr. Lynch, I think you might find some symbols of environmental friendliness. And Mr. Lovins, I hope you find a regard for energy in that building. I would enjoy talking about this building at some length. There are a lot of stories there. But I think, Dean, may I say that you gave me 1 to 3 minutes to present a building? And that is very typical of the time schedule they offer architects. I think the most important message I can convey is that the building is the efforts of many. It started with the university leadership and the college in establishing the programs and the planning studies. Don and I were joined by many, many design professionals. Some of the most important people to us are here today, and I'd like to just mention that our structural engineer, Bill Erickson, Frank Coe, our mechanical engineer, and Dick Bussing for electrical are extraordinary people. I'd like to, if I could, confer a degree on them, I would. The Hagerman Construction Company gave an extraordinary effort. And then from that company, there expanded hundreds and thousands of people that worked on that project. The carpenters, the glazers, the masons, and the electricians. And so, on behalf of those many, many highly skilled people of Indiana who contributed so much, I'd like to present this building to the Board of Trustees. And I ask them to regard it with continued love and affection.
Thank you, Mr. Crumlish. Governor Orr, Dr. Bell, ladies and gentlemen. The late Edgar A. Guest did not design buildings. He was best known as a poet, although he was not recognized as a great one. He was folksy and wrote doggerel verse that was widely printed and read in the newspapers in the 1920s and 30s. He is the one who wrote, "It takes a heap of living in a house to make it a home." That is my text for today. The facility that we dedicate today is one that gives significant focus to the three major facets of higher education: instruction, research, and service. It brings together under one roof again the students and faculty from the three departments of the College of Architecture and Planning who have been scattered around the campus for a number of years. This addition, with its new classroom and laboratory space, equipment, and the space-age technology of solar devices, places the college in a highly advantageous role as we move into the high technology of the 80s. Excuse me. Our architecture students have developed a particular public image during the college's brief history. They have been known to observe commencement somewhat differently than our other students. They are famous for burning the lamp of learning at hours that extend well beyond the norm for the rest of the campus. In short, what they seem to be doing, in company with the instructors and administrators who work with them, is bringing a heap of academic living into the place they call their instructional home. As the Board of Trustees formally accept, with pride and pleasure, this house of learning, we express the wish that a heap of living will continue to be a vital part of the education process for the students in these three departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Kester, Director of the Center for Energy Research, Education, and Service, with his thoughts on the new facility.
Governor Orr, Chairman Parker, President Bell, my platform colleagues, my faculty colleagues, the wonderful students, all you fine parents, friends, and other guests that are interested enough to be here today. I'd like to tell you that I have just a few comments to make. One is an observation about this important day for the College of Architecture and Planning and for Ball State University as a whole. First of all, I think that the symposium this morning was an extremely enjoyable presentation and one that was very informative. If anything, I think one conclusion can be drawn from all that was said by the various speakers. In spite of, or perhaps because of our technological situation, the challenge and issue of the future is in fact a human one. I have a couple observations to make about today's events. One is that this dedication, the entire event from morning till evening, is in fact a construct. That is, it is not unlike a building, a landscape design, or a city plan. In all cases, success is a product of a community of values, or a sense of sharing, or a sense of cooperation. And in fact, I think the success of today's dedication is evidence of that kind of sharing. I do have one request for you as an audience at large. We do have in the College of Architecture and Planning a long-standing tradition with our faculty and our students, and that is that when the students present their work for review, they are in fact a sharing community. They are a community that has a sense of common values, and they do present their work with goodwill, with love, and in the hopes of receiving response from both faculty and colleagues. The long-standing tradition is that upon completion of such a hard effort by them, the usual procedure is to award themselves with applause. I would like to suggest that in addition to all those on this podium, plus all the students and faculty, we have an equally large group of staff and other technical support personnel that have been instrumental in making today's events very successful. And I would ask you now, as a community with us, to share in a reward for those individuals by honoring them with your applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. It's an opportunity for me now to do something besides introduce people. President Bell, Governor Orr, members of the platform, and colleagues, guests, and all assembled here. I think it's become fairly clear to people that we're dedicating an addition to the college today by dint of the efforts of a great number of people, energy, support. The college was originally established at Ball State due to the efforts of President John Emmons, Vice President Richard Burkhart, Muncie architect Gene Hamilton, Dr. Alice Nichols, who at that time was chair of the art department, Dr. Bell, and many others. Over its 18-year history, the college has grown in numbers and reputation via the support of the university and the state legislature, the dedicated leadership of Charles Sappenfield, the energy and ability of our faculty and students. And we wouldn't have this new building that we are dedicating today if it weren't for the efforts, most recently of President Proust, Dr. Bell. Dr. Bell is somebody we don't have to ask what he's done for us lately. And the university, and obviously the state legislature and the governor. The continued support of the state. The point I'm attempting to make, I think, is in our brief history, we've incurred quite a few debts. This new building being the most recent addition to the list. The reasonable question, I think, is how do we pay off these debts? From my point of view, I would suggest that the payback that every one of these contributors would expect would be that we would be as good a college of architecture and planning as we can possibly be. This would justify, I believe, the confidence placed in us by the university, by the state legislature, and would be the only logical, as far as I'm concerned, collegiate response to our newly sophisticated and expanded facilities. In other words, if we have a facility which is equal to or superior to those of similar colleges in the nation, why should we not aspire to the same relative stature in instruction and scholarship? Why should we not maintain as a goal a college, when viewed in the aggregate, which is the best of its type in the nation? Thank you. Thus endeth this portion of the building dedication. We will be, those of us who wish, will be returning to the college for a brief ribbon cutting ceremony. I would like to inform you that we will have tour guides there to take you on tours of the building, There are exhibits from top to bottom of the building in spaces, inside of spaces. So there's no shortage of things to look at. Anything else, Jeff? I'd ask you to, we will be showing a film by Mr. Levins in the Energy Center at 3:30. I would ask you to remain until the platform party and the faculty have recessed. Thank you so much for coming.